Hi, I'm Suzy and I've just published my debut novel, Capulet Close, in January this year. It's the story of everyday folk. The strapline is, we all know someone who lives in this street. So it's about a group of people, 6 houses, and what happens, their relationships, their friendships, things that can go wrong. And the extract I'm going to read focuses on Freda, a lonely divorcee who's decided to dip her toe into the world of internet dating. We'll see what happens to Freda. The following Friday at 8 o'clock, Freda, face like thunder, was just stepping out of the taxi. Greg the driver knew Freda as she regularly used the services of Dial-A-Cab. She'd been almost silent on the journey, which was most unusual. In fact, when he came to think of it, they usually enjoyed a bit of flirty banter. "You okay, love?" he asked as she paid him. "Why wouldn't I be?" She snatched the change from his hand. "Keep your hair on, I was only asking. I was a bit worried about you as it goes." Hearing Freda's heels clicking along the pavement, he realised he was talking to thin air. 10 minutes later, Freda, a glass of gin in her hand, was on the dating site, looking at Lewis's profile page. "What the hell happened to you?" Her fingers flew over the keyboard as she typed. How dare he mess her about? She was livid. She felt such a deep sense of disappointment. She wanted to weep. Everything had seemed perfect. Too perfect, perhaps. When she'd first been winked at by Lewis only hours after she'd edited her profile, she couldn't believe her luck. He was 42 years old, dark and good-looking. He said that he worked out and looked very fit. Freda hugged herself in delight as she imagined being enfolded in his passionate embrace and covered with hot, hungry kisses. He expressed a preference for older women, saying that they had life experience. He had mentioned being in a band and said he was fed up of irritating young women who hung around after gigs, wanting a date or photo with the band. He went on to say that he preferred real women, those who have experienced life. Freda was delighted. She wondered if he would let her sing if she came along to one of his gigs. During the day he was a builder working for his uncle's firm. "Just like Blake, we've got so much in common, it's uncanny." She told Maisie about him, explaining that, like her, he was the eldest of a large family, and he also had a very difficult relationship with his dad. Maisie had made some sarcastic comment about that being one too many coincidences, and had Freda not thought that he might just be telling her what she wanted to hear? Irritably, Freda dismissed Maisie's response as jealousy. In the following hours, poor Freddie got short shrift. She abandoned his walks and, ignoring his reproachful looks, just let him out into the garden. Freda just couldn't keep away from the laptop, and by Sunday, in spite of her friends' pleas to be careful, they'd arranged a date for the following Friday. They were going to meet at 6 p.m. at the Harvester. Lewis, bless him, was a real gentleman. He was going to book a room, only so that they could have a drink, he reassured her. No pressure for her to sleep with him. "Oh, he's responsible. I do like that in a man." She was completely besotted with him. Their messages had quickly become flirty, and then they'd exchanged photos. Freda had sent a daring picture of herself in a red satin bag, complete with stockings and suspenders. Lewis's response had been everything she could have wished for. "I can't wait for you to dress up for me." She had to confess some of his messages had made even her blush, and she wasn't easily shocked. She hadn't dared tell Maisie half the things they'd said to each other. She'd be appalled. Freda had printed off a copy of Lewis's photo and kept it in her purse. She had taken to flashing it about, saying that she was in a relationship. Valerie was another one who didn't seem impressed. Freda recalled the usually smiling Valerie being quite sharp with her and ushering Freda into the car, saying they were in a hurry. "She didn't even look at the photo, snotty cow, and it was her that said I should get out there. You can't please some people." Freda dismissed all thoughts of disapproving friends and neighbours and settled back to her fantasies. She got all hot and bothered just thinking about Lewis. The photo showed him stripped to the waist and drinking from a can of Coke, his chest gleaming with sweat. In the background was a row of half-built houses. Maisie had muttered darkly, "A bit staged, don't you think? He looks like a model on the Diet Coke advert." Freda snatched the picture from Maisie, face like thunder. Maisie could believe what she liked. Lewis was lovely and he was all hers. She was just jealous. Freda recalled some of the compliments he'd paid her. He said that she had beautiful eyes, but what she most liked was when he listed in graphic detail all of the things he would love to do to her. She shivered in anticipation. Roll on Friday. Meanwhile, the much-maligned Maisie was lost in thought, hard at work organising the stock rotation in the shop. She knew that in her efforts to be a good friend, she was annoying Freda by pointing out holes in Lewis's story. She felt that he was telling Freda what she wanted to hear, making out they had more in common than they really did. She was genuinely worried about how this was going to turn out. She picked up pieces of Freda's failed romances before, and she knew from bitter experience that an unhappy Freda was even harder work than a happy one. She was startled out of her reverie by a lady with a beaming smile. "Hi, you're Freda's friend, aren't you? We met at Dave's band practice. Do you remember? I'm Valerie, a neighbour of Freda's." Maisie did remember her. "Not being rude, Valerie, but I'll have to carry on doing this while we chat." Valerie gave a hearty laugh. Well, women are good at multitasking. Valerie wasn't happy that Freda had been unable to resist telling her about Lewis. As far as Valerie was concerned, it was totally inappropriate. She continued, "I was so cross. She came over just as I was taking Florence to her music lesson." Valerie explained that she only stopped because she remembered how down in the dumps Freda had been last time they'd met. She had a few tears because Gary and James had a party and didn't invite her. Maisie nodded understandingly. Valerie continued, "She came bounding over, full of the joys, and showed me a picture of a young chap, young enough to be her son, and had the cheek to pass it to Florence. She's only 15, for goodness sake. She doesn't need all the gory details, telling us she's in a relationship indeed." Throughout the conversation, Maisie continued pricing goods and arranging them all in the chill cabinet. Once Valerie paused for breath, Maisie placed a hand on her sleeve in a calming gesture. "I am worried too, Valerie, but as soon as I say anything, voice any concerns at all, she snaps my head off. Freda can be hard work, but she's my friend, so I don't feel as though I can criticise her to anyone else." Maisie went on to say that she'd made Freda leave the open mic early. Her young neighbours were there, and I think she really wanted to stay to the end. Valerie smiled sympathetically. "I did tell her that she should be more considerate. Just a thought, Maisie, but maybe you shouldn't be quite so available." Valerie headed off to the vegetable aisle, giving Maisie a friendly wave as she hurried away. Once Freda was indoors, she'd quickly let Freddie outside. After a slug of gin, she was all fired up and ready to do battle. She felt so angry she could spit. She felt she'd wasted a week of her life on Lewis. Maisie would have plenty to say, no doubt. She said he seemed too good to be true, and much as she hated to admit it, she was right. Who did this bloody Lewis think he was, treating her like this? Just wait until she reported him to matchmakers. She'd get him banned. She'd been so excited about the date, her first in nearly 5 years. She dressed carefully in a smart knee-length black and red dress. She hated the tops of her arms, which she'd always thought were a bit flabby, and had pulled on a fluffy red shrug which concealed the bits she was most self-conscious about. Along with her high heels, she'd been dressed to impress and had admired herself in the mirror before leaving the house. Maisie would be ringing in a minute, the 9 o'clock phone call, the only thing she'd insisted on. "Well, at least if you need an excuse to get away, you can pretend it's a family emergency. If everything's okay, just say that you'll call back tomorrow." Freda had agreed impatiently. She hadn't wanted a worried Maisie bursting in on a romantic moment between her and Lewis. No chance of that now, she thought bitterly, reflecting on the events of the evening. And to find out what happens next, you'll have to buy Capulet Close. Thank you.